As I've been painting some full armies recently, I've noticed that I kinda suck at differentiating multiples of the same units. Don't get me wrong, they look damn cool on the tabletop. It just makes it harder to readily separate them in-game. With this skeleton army, I've got some units that are identical. So this was a perfect time to explore some ways to make them different, but feel like they exist within the same army. Welcome back to the $100 Army, Episode 3. Maybe, probably, the last in the series. Probably. For now, I think. There are a few ways to make copies of units the same, but different. And first up were the two chariots I had planned to use in my list. I really like the skeletal, Roman sort of aesthetic of the skeleton army, and it works particularly well with these chariots. The sprues come with open and closed side options, and I mostly went with the open option. This just felt a bit more ramshackle and shambling undead-like. I did, however, use a single enclosed side on one of these rides as a preliminary differentiation point. Now, in the game, I like the option of the riders being equipped with bows. Try to get a few pot shots in before the chariots plow into the flanks. This is jank and flank after all. We don't need to be too what you see is what you get. So I gave one of these undead occupants a horn. I figured it'd be a very quick, visual way to distinguish which chariot is which. You know, the horny one. Like I'd done with the skellies in the first two episodes of this series, I base coated everything with grunge brown. Followed by a zenithal highlight of scruffulous brown. Then I grab the dry brush and get a fairly heavy coat of bone white all over these skeletons and the horses. All the bones get bone white. Now, with these horses attached to the chariot and the base, it does make it difficult to get the brush everywhere, but I wasn't at all bothered. If the brush can't get there, no one will see it on the tabletop. Once everything gets covered with bone white, I grab some white and add it to the highest points and upward-facing surfaces, using a much lighter touch. If you missed the second episode of this series, this is my current go-to tabletop-ready rusty metal recipe. I'll start by roughly covering the metal pieces with chainmail, a metallic paint from the Vallejo game color line that I actually don't mind using. I'm not particularly concerned about perfect coverage, just aiming to get as much as possible in a quick pass, and staying neat enough to avoid getting the paint everywhere I don't want it. Once that's dry, I'll fairly heavily dilute grunge brown, my current favorite rusty color, applying it like a wash all over the metallic bits. You really can't over-thin the paint here. I find it's better to add another layer of too thin wash than to lay it on too thick. After painting these two chariots essentially the same, with slightly different crew, I wanted to try something slightly different with the two units of Royal Guard I had planned. I was pretty happy with how these looked, but maybe changing up the metal between the two would help. So with that in mind, I started knocking together two units of Royal Guard. This skeleton army box from Wargames Atlantic is what set this $100 Army series in motion. 4 chariots, 18 horses, and 85 skeletons, providing loads of options for list writing potential in one-page rules regiments, or even Warhammer the Old World. All for the low ticket price of $90 USD. Wargames Atlantic makes some of my favorite kits, from classic fantasy, like these skeletons, to dystopian far future. And they're even making box games from small creators, such as The Last War. If you'd like to get some for yourself, click the link in the description. There's absolutely no cost to you, but it does toss a coin to your Witcher, or me. And it lets Wargames Atlantic know to continue supporting small, independent creators. Anyways, thanks Wargames Atlantic, and now back to these shambling undead. Now these Royal Guard have heavy great weapons, and there are two types of swords amongst the cavalry and warrior sprues. So I figured the thing to do to help separate the two identical units was to give all of one unit one type of sword. So while they have the same weapon for gameplay, they were different enough to identify them on the tabletop. To make the sergeant of each unit stand out, and to take up more real estate, just like the unit filler from the first episode, I cut out 75 by 25mm pieces of plasticard for their bases. Then, to signify their leadership, these fellas found themselves some nice tactical rocks. Jank and flank means unit fillers and tactical rocks. It's in the rules. Trust me. I quickly slapped color on all of these dusty old bones, just like I'd done with the chariots and riders. Then got to work on all of the metal. This is where I wanted to deviate from what I'd done with the chariots. Each unit would have different metallics. Starting with the first unit, I grabbed Brassy Brass from Game Color by Vallejo, another metallic paint that I don't actually hate, and slapped it onto the swords, helmets, and the sergeant's chestplate. I needed to add some oxidation to this brassy metal, and I figured I could do a quick and dirty wash, much like I had with the chainmail silver. So I grabbed the conveniently named Verdigris from Game Color, thinned it down, and splashed it all over this brass metallic. I'm not totally happy with the results of this, even with a couple of coats. Not enough that I want to change it, of course, but next time I'd use a slightly stronger color. Maybe something like Ghost Green. The other unit got the tried and true chainmail followed by a grunge brown wash. A simple, easy formula that gets pretty great results. If you wanted to crank it up a bit, you could reapply some highlights with chainmail, or even a brighter silver. For these dusty fellas though, I like this look. With that, I had these 4 units done. More importantly though, a fully painted $100 army. I'm fairly happy with how I've differentiated these unit copies, and I'm looking forward to developing these and other techniques in future armies that I'm already planning. While this is a completely playable 1500 point regiment's army, I know it's not finished. There are still plenty of minis left in the box, and I know I'll be scheming up new units to swap in as I play more games of Jank and Flank. So look out, Spooky. Your ogres and gobos are getting swept aside by this shambling horde. Once again, thanks Wargames Atlantic for supporting independent creators. Check out the link in the description to get your own Skeleton Army box, the Last War box set, or any number of awesome kits. Most importantly though, thanks for watching. You are awesome.